Welcome to Food Safety 5, twice monthly reports from the Food Safety Magazine editorial desk to keep you abreast of top news stories and current events impacting the food safety sector. This episode discusses Florida's new contaminant testing program, the missing details about its methodology, and the impacts of sharing the findings without scientific context. In January, Florida First Lady Casey DeSantis announced the Healthy Florida First initiative, a statewide program that tests for contaminants in food products. The program represents a $5 million investment to expand product testing for contaminants like heavy metals, bacteria, pesticides, and microplastics, which was described by Governor Ron DeSantis as aligned with the Make America Healthy Again, or MAHA, agenda. So far, Healthy Florida First has produced reports raising concerns about heavy metals in infant formula, arsenic in candy products, and glyphosate in bread, based on sampling and testing conducted by the Florida Department of Health. Aside from listing the names of products, the levels of a certain contaminant detected, and whether the product poses an undefined risk to consumers, the reports provide few details. The lack of transparency about the science behind the Healthy Florida First tests has drawn criticism from experts who say the findings cannot be contextualized and have the potential to cause consumer confusion. The Florida Department of Health provided some information beyond what is included in the reports in the statement to the Daytona Beach News Journal, revealing that, specifically for the candy testing assignment, samples were analyzed using the EPA method 6010D for the multi-elemental determination of metals in solid and liquid samples. However, according to toxicologist and certified industrial hygienist Dr. Alec LeBeau, who spoke to Food Safety Magazine about the topic, EPA method 6010D is an environmental sample analytical method for identifying inorganic metals in environmental matrices, like soil, rather than food matrices. The Florida Department of Health did not explain why it chose an environmental matrix analysis rather than a testing method intended for food matrices, or whether the laboratory modified the EPA method as the basis for performing additional analysis. It is also unclear whether the Healthy Florida First reports are choosing to share contaminant levels detected in singular samples or the averages of multiple samples, or whether averages across products and lots were considered. Another unknown factor is the laboratory's limit of detection, or LOD. Samples where no contaminant is detected are usually reported as being less than the LOD, and the LOD is stated by the lab. Dr. LeBeau also explained the important distinction between hazards identification and risk assessment. A hazard is a potential source of harm from a substance before considering the concepts of exposure and dose. Risk is the probability of potential adverse effects resulting from exposure to a hazard. Exposure to a hazard does not mean that a person is at realistic risk of an associated health outcome. There are levels for many hazards that human bodies can internalize without an appreciable elevated risk of harm. There are various validated risk assessment models to assess exposure to a hazard and quantify the risk of harm to human health. However, because the Florida Department of Health has not disclosed the equations, assumptions, or inputs involved in its risk assessments, it is impossible to contextualize what the Healthy Florida First report's findings mean or if they represent realistic exposure or harm to consumers. From an exposure scientist's perspective, without scientific context, the Healthy Florida First reports do not convey any interpretable meaning and do nothing to help concerned parents understand whether a product is safe or unsafe for consumption, said Dr. LeBeau. As explained in the December 2025, January 2026 issue of Food Safety Magazine, in an article written by toxicologists Drs. Neva Jacobs, Anya Urban, and Andrew Masarski, the authors state, people are often inherently more fearful of certain types of exposures, such as those that are beyond their control, engineered, or have no apparent health benefit, and/or experienced by children. Customers will likely be fearful if presented with reports that a hazard has been detected in foods they purchase or consume. To help customers understand the potential for risk associated with these exposures, both consumer messaging and scientific reports should include information explaining why these impurities are present and how these exposures compare to health-based guidance values and/or exposures from alternative, familiar sources. Just as important, this messaging should come from a trusted and credible source. For more information on any of the stories mentioned in this video, be sure to check out the Food Safety Magazine coverage linked in the description. Check back twice monthly on Tuesdays for the latest Food Safety 5 episodes, available at food-safety.com or on our YouTube channel.